Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Remember when Prime Minister Mark Carney promised that he might approve a pipeline? Well, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and her UCP government is putting that to the test. I've always thought that what Mark Carney was doing was merely rhetorically shifting. Before he became Prime Minister, he was very staunchly anti pipeline, anti oil and gas development, at least in Canada. And after becoming prime minister and having to run in the federal election, he had to moderate his rhetoric. So he said, well, of course I'll approve a pipeline if, and then the list of ifs is very long and it means basically no. Mark Carney has just merely outsourced saying no to other parties, which are indigenous groups, environmental groups, as well as other provincial governments. And so Danielle Smith, by saying that the government's willing to put $30 million on the table for a West Coast pipeline is showing just how stupid the approval process is for a pipeline within this liberal government. It's basically saying, well, if you do an impossible task of getting every single person to agree, then I will also agree. It's stupid. Anyways, before we get into the details of this, guys, I just want to remind you if you like the show, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet a subscriber, and leave a comment to tell me what you guys think helps us on the algorithm. And I do like scrolling through and seeing what people have to say. If I seem a little bit foggy headed, I am a little bit. I've been dehydrated for 3 or 4 days. I actually had to go to the emergency room a couple days back, not because I was like fainting. I felt super faint, but I have this weird thing where I don't feel when I'm becoming dehydrated. So I've been dehydrated for like weeks and didn't notice it. And now I'm slowly having to recover. But let's start off with this article from the Toronto Sun. And it reads Carney Liberals build groundwork to blame pipeline failure on private sector. This was just an opinion article breaking down the situation. I will link it in the description below, but it kind of sums up what I've already been talking about. Carney smartly will just continue saying, well, of course, I'm in favor of a pipeline. It just needs to be driven by the private sector. But at the same time, the man won't get out of the way of a new project, and he still has things like Bill C-48 and Bill C-69 in the way, preventing a project from being made. So he will not actually get rid of all the hurdles for a private company willing to put up all the money to start a pipeline. But he'll just sit there saying, "Well, of course I'll prove it if they do that impossible task of putting way more money forward than any other oil and gas company would have to in another jurisdiction in order to get a project started or a pipeline built." But now let's jump over to what Danielle Smith is doing because I find this quite smart. So what she just dropped this video today talking about the Alberta government's intention of helping fund a private sector pipeline project in order to help them clear these cost hurdles because of the federal government's hurdles that they put in the way.
We've come together here today because Canada stands at a critical crossroads. Beneath our feet here in Alberta, we stand on oil reserves valued at over $9 trillion. What stands before us right now is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unlock our wealth of resources and become a world-leading energy superpower. And that's why we are announcing that the government of Alberta will be the proponent of an oil pipeline to the Northwest BC coast, with the support and technical advice of three major pipeline companies, including Southbow, Enbridge, and Trans Mountain. Our government will make a formal application to the Federal Project Office under the Building Canada Act. With today's announcement, Alberta is prepared to answer the call to support global energy security efforts while creating lasting prosperity for Albertans and Canadians for generations to come.
So she's basically put Carney in a corner. Well, you should have to say yes to this because, well, now there is a pipeline project. There are companies lined up in order to jump on board. But Carney does have one weaselly card left up his sleeve, and that is the awful premier of British Columbia, David Eby, who said, well, of course I'm in favor of a pipeline if it's private sector funded. Except now he's walking that back because apparently if the Alberta government's involved, that means it's bad, even though David Eby has never found something government run that he hasn't liked.
You have in the past kind of given a range of answers that indicate that you might be willing to entertain an oil pipeline. So let me try again. You keep saying this is not a real project, but Alberta is filing an application. Will BC oppose that application, or will it be leaving that up to First Nations to oppose?
Well, Justine, I disagree with the premise of your question. We have supported the tanker ban from the very beginning because it is foundational to our ability to get some major projects done, including at the Port of Prince Rupert, including major export projects like LNG Canada that have facilitated a 4% increase in Canadian GDP. And to put that tanker ban at threat, it's not just a threat to our pristine coast that so many British Columbians, including myself, value, but it is a direct economic threat to the kind of economy that we're trying to build in the country here.
It's such a Weasley answer. What do you mean by threat? I thought he was maybe gonna like weave into the answer where he's gonna say, well, international trade bodies won't want to work with us if we're poisoning the earth. And he doesn't even go there. He basically says it's a threat to the economy I want to build. It's like, okay, so it's not a green economy. And then I'm gonna cut to her later. Actually, I'm not even gonna spoil it. There's another party leader in BC that I need to say something about. And for once, I'm not going to say something bad about John Rusted. Am I going to say something good about him? No, he is purely irrelevant in this situation. By the way, guys, if you live in BC, make sure to join the One BC party, the party that's not firing staffers for saying true things about the Kamloops grave hoax. Oh, that will be another video for another day. But I will let David Eby finish up here.
And so when I've said, let's cross that bridge when we come to it, we'll see what the Premier comes up with. I'm being polite. I am being polite.
Oh, wow, he's being polite. The human emu is being polite about this.
There is no project. There is no bridge to cross unless the Albertan government and the federal Canadian government are committing billions of taxpayer dollars to build this project. And if that is the plan, then they should be transparent about it. Don't mistake my politeness for weakness.
Yeah, he's so polite right now, getting mad about a project that the private sector is on board with. The Alberta government is giving seed money for it, and then the private sector is going to do the rest. I have not heard here. She's not. All that has to happen is for the government to basically say, okay, we will suspend Bill C-69 and Bill C-48, and we will let the project go forward. But again, there's all these random stupid hurdles that the government has put up and said, oh, wow, it's not economically viable. It's like, oh, wow, it's almost like when you shoot someone in the head, they don't move very much. Because that's effectively what the government's done to all these projects.
On protecting our economy and our coast. Now, I hope that clears things up, but, let's cross that bridge once she's got a proponent in the money.
She does. Okay, but whatever. Clear as mud, David Eby. But now we have to cut over to something else, which is a man who is worse at politics than anyone I've seen. And that, of course, is Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi. You are living in the oil and gas province, and he is opposing this plan. He says right here, in Danielle Smith's own words, this is an utter failure. A committee can't build a pipeline, especially when there's no route, no proponent, and no real funding. There's also no commitment from the federal government to repeal the legislation that would make this pipeline possible. Well, he won't. Naheed Nenshi at the same time won't actually call for the government to repeal 4869. He doesn't care, and there's no route, proponent, or real funding. The Alberta government is simply saying, if we put forward this money, will you guys tentatively say yes, and we can put out some route ideas. We can try and go over some of the plans that we could propose. The problem is, again, they are going into an area where everything is a landmine. And so she's saying, how about I put up the money, I get the companies together, and we say we want to make one to the northwest of British Columbia to export from there. Will you say yes to that as much as that? Okay, so now we will find Indigenous partners who will let the pipeline go through their territory. That's all foolishness at the end of the day, but it's just how Alberta has to behave right now because of DRIPA in British Columbia and under it being adopted federally. You're going to have to find some Indigenous group who wants the pipeline, and frankly, the band council would be foolish to not want the pipeline. It's actual prosperity. It's not just handouts. But anyways, and Naheed Nenshi is attacking it. Who could guess why working class people don't vote for the Alberta NDP? But anyways, now I want to cut over to a interview that Danielle Smith did on CTV News with Vashi Kapelos. And then I need to get to the leader of the BC Greens, who again was trying to attack this whole idea that these people would live in a fantasy world. It's ridiculous how these people just think you can drive an economy on like education dollars and government services.
Is 14 million the max that your government will invest of taxpayer money?
I hope so. But as I've said, we will
But you're not
also
ruling it
be
out.
prepared. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because we have a facility called the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation, where we have the ability to underwrite up to $3 billion in loan guarantees so that Indigenous nations are able to take an equity stake. So that gives you an idea of how serious we are about underwriting these kinds of projects. We've already done that with $750 million worth of projects, including pipeline projects that are going.
I maybe got the number wrong. I think at somewhere else I heard that they were willing to go up to 30 million as a direct grant. But then the 3 billion is obviously the more substantial amount to basically say, hey, as an Indigenous band, we will literally give you the money to buy this thing, and then you can pay it off and the revenue it generates. It's very straightforward for these bands to say yes.
To deliver $1.3 billion worth of revenue to 43 of our 44 nations. So we've already put our money where our mouth is, and we're prepared to do more of that. The federal government also has a similar type of program, and we're hoping to be able to partner with them on that. I think that that's the appropriate way for governments to intervene, is to make sure that Indigenous equity stakes can be purchased and that they can get the long-term benefit from it.
But just to be clear, like that's loans. I'm saying like right now you're putting $14 million in to get this process going. Are you going to put $5 billion in to get it built? That's the question.
Well, look, we have to find out what it's going to cost to build. I've been told that it could be anywhere from $20 to $30 billion. And no, Alberta doesn't have the money to build $20 or $30 billion. We need a private sector proponent. The way we get a private sector proponent is we work with the federal government so that there's an answer that's going to be yes at the end of this process. And I am very confident when we get to that point that the private sector will come in. It's going to be up to Prime Minister Carney.
And she has gotten that. When you have Enbridge and these other two oil and gas companies basically saying, okay, if there is a yes, we will dump money in, because these companies could put that money in, but who's going to put money into an exploratory fund, which the Alberta government is right now paying for, when the answer could be no? And if you are the employee who improved that, or you are the executive on the board who proposed this, and you end up just wasting $20 million just to have a no and to have your own investors be like, why did we even bother? Obviously, you're not going to go for it. But now there's actually a path forward, and it looks like the Carney government either has to actually put up or shut up and just admit that they were never actually serious about a pipeline.
Whether or not he wants to work with us on being able to advance these kinds of projects or not, whether what he campaigned on in being a leader in the G7 and being an energy superpower on conventional and new energy is real. And so we will see. We'll know in pretty short order, because I'll be meeting with him, and we'll be continuing to do the technical work. And I would hope that the answer is yes.
So yeah, that's where this thing currently sits at. I've talked to some people in the UCP, and they're not super confident Carney's actually going to say yes. If anything, this is, again, the primary function of this. It should work. In a rational country, this should be a fine proposal that gets approved, saying, oh, okay, good. You guys are willing to put up the money to do the exploratory. If we say yes, these companies will then kick in the money and start immediately building. But no, really, it's just going to be Mark Carney probably, humming and hawing about, oh, well, the private sector hasn't put up all $20 billion already. Well, can it really be done? Also, I'm not going to get rid of Bill C-69, Bill C-48, and all the other stuff. But there is one more actor in all of this that is somehow more ridiculous. And it is Emily Lowen, who is the BC Green leader, who does in fact have 2 MLAs in the legislature. She says, hey, Danielle Smith, let's find out first if we're part of the same country before you come knocking with bitumen schemes, laughable national interest pitch from a province trying to break up the country. Last thing our climate coffers can afford is TMX 2.0 boondoggle. Well, okay, there's all these lies that go around about the Trans Mountain Pipeline that somehow wasn't good. Like, it makes money. It is, in fact, a net positive. It was not as big of a net positive as it could be, because, again, the government has undermined so much confidence in the energy sector that they had to use all of taxpayer dollars in order to build buy and extend the pipeline anyways. But, like, goodness, this is the picture of why the Green Party is so unpopular federally and even provincially in BC, where it does the best out of anywhere. You can't drive an economy based on farmers market jam, and beeswax candles. And these people just think you can just naysay anything that smacks too much of capitalism. Oh my goodness, energy, we might actually have jobs. Well, screw that. Kill the project. Oh my goodness. Anyway, and this is why you should want the One BC party to gain more power in British Columbia, because you need a party that is just going to be through and through pro pipeline. That's it. We're not dealing with DRIPA. We want to repeal DRIPA. We want to just get pipelines built, because nothing can stand in the way of national economic interests. Stop having all these small little interest groups blocking everything forever. They don't even represent more than 5% of the population, and yet we cater constantly in this country to people who in fact are paid, so are basically profiting off of everyone else not profiting. It is like these people hate capitalism, but they are in fact the cartoon characters that they paint capitalism as. Capitalism is very fair. These people make money holding up other projects, getting paid to advocate against other people's economic interests. That's actually disgusting. But anyways, that should be it for this video, guys. We will be back as soon as we have, actually, no, wait. We're not leaving, guys. We got another thing to talk about. We actually had a response from Pierre Poilievre. This is how glassy brained I am right now. But I think Poilievre had a really good response to all of this. And my friend Raheem Mohammed from National Post was the one who asked him the question.
Raheem Mohammed, National Post.
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with your premier that a new West Coast pipeline is a litmus test for whether Canada still works and whether we can still build things in this country?
Almost. I think it's a litmus test for Mark Carney. There was a lot of grandiose promises by Mr. Carney during the election that he would build faster than you'd ever imagined we could build. So when is this building going to happen? Here we are, 6 months after he took office, and the new Liberal government looks an awful lot like the old Liberal government. The last 6 months looks an awful lot like the last 10 years, where they block. So there's only one person who will decide if this pipeline gets built, and it's Mark Carney. So I would encourage you all to ignore provincial politicians who have no authority in this matter. Like the reality is the federal government has the full authority over interprovincial pipelines. So there's one man who stands in the way of this pipeline getting built. It's Mark Carney. If the Liberals want it built, they will immediately repeal the tanker ban so the pipe can fill a ship that goes abroad, the production cap so that our producers can make enough oil to go in the pipe, and C-69 so that the pipe can get rapidly approved. Mark Carney really only has to do one thing. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. I will note there is some good news, followed by bad news. Canadian pipeline companies are building pipelines. That's the good news. Terrible news. They're building them in the United States of America without taxpayer support. Enbridge is building 2 pipelines right now in the US without taxpayer money. TransCanada Pipelines is building $8.5 billion of brand new projects in the United States without taxpayer money. But here in Canada, Mark Carney is in the way.
And again, it's the politics of basically exporting, or what was the outsourcing, saying no. Carney will say yes all day long. At the same time, he'll say, well, but David Eby doesn't want to do it. Oh, well, but this nation doesn't want to do it. The Wet'suwet'en don't want to do it. Well, these people don't want to do it. Oh, Wob Canoe doesn't want to do it in Manitoba. He'll just keep doing this forever until he's caught, and I'm happy that the UCP government in Alberta and Danielle Smith are trying to catch him as fast as possible so he can be exposed as a hypocrite. Anyways, so this is the real end of the video, guys. I need to go have a glass of water. Again, dehydration is a pain. Again, for some reason, I never understand that I'm becoming dehydrated, but I do just drink coffee like all day long, and I have like 1 glass of water in a day. It's stupidity on my part. But with all that being said, make sure to like the video, subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and I will see you guys next time.